Welcome to Cowgirl Talk, where we empower you to live authentically through real food, real talk, and real life. Sisters brought together by our love of cows. We're your host, Emily, a dairy lover and personal trainer living in Florida.
And Becca, a corporate cowgirl holding down the family fort in Pennsylvania. Let's go, cowgirls!
Hello, and welcome back to Cowgirl Talk. Today we have another amazing guest, and we are so excited to welcome Katie Hammock, better known as the Dairy Wife on Instagram. Katie is an ER nurse, she's a dairy farmer's wife, a mom, and a farm safety educator. And so in today's episode, we are going to be diving more into her story so y'all understand a little bit more of where her background comes from, but then also really sharing some ag-related stories from the ER, practical and unfortunately often overlooked farm safety tips. And so a little bit of a disclaimer is that we will talk about accidents and different things that can happen on the farm, different stories she has seen in the ER, but like nothing gets too gory. I would say we keep things kind of like, I don't know, would you say PG-13, Becca?
Oh my god, it's definitely PG-13.
Oh, okay, yeah.
But it requires, if you are triggered by maybe accidents, it's good to know that we do talk, like there are specific details. Now, she's not saying like blood was squirting everywhere, but she does talk about like actual things that could happen. So if that's not your jam,
true.
See you next week.
Yeah, just be aware. But yeah, like Becca said, there's nothing into the gritty kind of gory details, but yeah, just overall just talking about the actual accidents and realistic things that she has seen. And we just know that we have a lot of people that listen to this that are involved in agriculture or on a farm in some capacity, and we just think this is a very important conversation to have, as kind of like she said, sometimes we can just get complacent, and this can be an important topic, important things to think about every now and then and make sure you're being aware of on your operation or for loved ones in your life. So aside from that, before we get into more of the, heavy hitting details, we'll start it a little bit lighter, depending, but we'll do our highs, lows, and buffaloes. And I have maybe my highs and buffalo for the week. I don't necessarily have a low yet for the week, which I guess is a good thing. So Becca, what do you want to start with?
Ooh, I guess I'll start with my low.
Get it out of the way.
I'm the only one that has one. One of my lows is that traffic in Altoona starts even at 6:45 a.m.
Before Sir Course, like the fart cans are already at it. I thought she meant like so maybe Phoebe was farting or something.
No, it's these stinky. These cars are brap. You
can't hear them. I don't know if Riverside that's our platform, will kind of cut them out, but you can hear them like they're racing.
I don't think they do. No, whenever I listen back, you can always hear them. So, okay. Oh my god, there's low number one. And the other one related to being up early is that, for my morning workout classes, I now have to wake up earlier to defrost and scrape my windshields because it's cold enough. Yesterday, whenever I woke up for my class, it was 48 degrees outside. So it was, honestly, you can tell you're a Northeaster when you walk out and you say, ooh, that feels nice. It's kind of warm.
Yeah.
But last week it was, 35, 36 degrees outside in the morning.
Oh my gosh. So
I'm like, oh, okay. I literally timed this so I make it there 1 minute before the class starts.
This is not going to work for me.
I did. I got my, I was holding off, logging back into and changing my password for my, app for my car to
start it ahead of time.
Yeah. So whenever I wake up, I start it. So it's at least already, partially ready to go whenever I get out there. So I would say that's my low, is having to defrost my windshield.
Okay, so I can think of a low now, and it's not a super dramatic one, but of course with being in Florida, and just in general the Southeast, right? Can't complain about having to defrost anything. But I feel like, again, it's a double-edged sword. Okay, so we don't necessarily get the cooler weather, which it was, last Friday, it never really got above 70 or something, and that was incredible. That was amazing. I need more of that. But we don't get the fall foliage. How do you say it? We don't get that. down here. And growing up, a Pennsylvania girl, growing up in the Northeast, I really do miss that. And I, of course, see pictures of it on social media, but with growing up in it your whole life and then just not getting that anymore, I even think my laptop background is pretty fall leaves right now. I just don't get that anymore. And again, there's trade offs wherever you live, but I would say that's my love, just seeing everyone experience that right now. And that's what I would say the season I miss the most with living in the South is having a real fall.
Yeah. Well, and plus, it's just anywhere you drive at this
Mm-hmm.
time of the year. I know, I can tell the older I get, the more I'm like, I need to like enjoy every drive, because in
Yeah.
the next like 1, 2 weekends, it's just poof, everything's
Yep.
going to be gone. So yeah, I
Enjoy it for me.
I would miss that too. Yeah. Well
Yeah,
then,
so it's
and
not a
what's your
dramatic blow.
um? So does it? Everything just stays green all year long in Florida, I guess.
Yeah, pretty much, which
Oh.
I feel like leaves die, but they just never change. Sometimes they just die, I guess, because you'll see dead leaves on the ground. But that I guess leads in my high that with whatever you want to call this as fall, you do get cooler weather, which almost feels like summer in other places, but it does feel very good compared to the summertime here. But on a high, I was talking about how the weather was really great on Friday, and our dad actually came down to visit. And so that was a lot of fun. We got to go golf, and it was a terrible day of golf. I haven't played in a while, and I just played terribly, but I honestly I didn't care, right? Because I got to hang out with him, and then our brother came over, his girlfriend, so we just had a really great day of golf, and it was beautiful weather. And again, I may not be getting that fall weather, but I even was able to wear a light pullover all day, and there were maybe some
Oh,
moments that I got a little bit toasty, but that was a huge win for me. I was like, I'm gonna keep this on all day, and I don't freaking care, because that was a big win, being able to keep a long sleeve on while playing golf.
Pappy Jim called me last night. He's like, okay, I've either seen or talked to all the other hooligans.
Yep.
Like, what are you doing? And he was talking about, the weekend you all
Yep.
spent, because you guys also went to go see our
Yep.
Pap and his wife, Lisa. And whenever they called, they were already talking about the desserts that they're planning for whenever
Oh
we go
yeah.
down for Christmas, because Lisa's a really, really good cook, and she's an
Uh-huh.
excellent, like an even better baker. And so
Yes.
um, she said Dad put in a request for a lemon cheesecake.
That was
And then,
brought up.
so I put my vote towards that. And then she also said, ooh, well, what about lemon curd on top? And I was like, yes.
You do whatever, because I don't know what I'm gonna do. And that sounds delicious. And yeah, so we always have, again, delicious food, but desserts are always a big part of those family
Mm-hmm.
dinners or those family lunches. And so it's something we have to prepare and discuss ahead of time because there's
Yeah.
so many options. But then I guess a high could be the brownies she made this past weekend
Oh, yeah, she
were
said they were also amazing.
dude, they were so good. They were, of course, chocolate, but then they had some white chocolate chips in it. They had cream cheese in it, and then this almost cream cheese kind of topping. And then she drizzled some caramel and whipped cream.
Ooh.
And oh my goodness, they were so good. So I think we did also request some brownies for our
Mm-hmm.
holiday dinner. And Ruben never listened, so I can say this. We took some home, and he's like, these can't be near me. I need these out of the house. He ate 3 of them on Sunday because he's like, these need to be gone. So he ate 3 of them. I was like, dude, just wait. We can eat some tomorrow. He's like, no, they need to be out of here. So we ate all of them.
These can't
Maniac.
be near me. Oh,
Literally.
that's
He
so
was like, do you
funny.
want another one? I was like, no, I don't. I would have it tomorrow. And no, we just housed the brownies in one day.
You just need to hide them in your room somewhere.
Literally. I don't know. I should have got a mini fridge and put it in the corner.
That's so funny. These need to be gone.
Yeah, so that's Ruben for you. That's probably his low for the week. A high and a low at the same time.
It probably feels terrible today. Or, well, yesterday.
Yeah,
Yesterday
he
was
started
Monday
the day
when
off
we're
with a
recording
run,
this.
so it was a
Oh,
good way to start the day.
that's good, because that's what I guess that kind of goes into my high, which is good in preparation for.
Sorry, there's a bug. There's like a little, of course, Florida too. A little freaking like natter fruit fly or something in my face. Sorry, go ahead. I forgot. You can't see me recording. Like, motherfucker, get out of here. Too early for this.
Oh my gosh. So, in preparation for all of this food that we're going to eat, whenever we visit them for Christmas, is I've been in an especially good workout routine lately.
Ooh.
And I've been keeping up finally in our weightlifting classes.
Heck yeah. We love
Well,
weightlifting.
yeah, and not necessarily keeping up with everyone else's weight, but like doing everything without modification or
Yeah.
adding weight when people add weight or using the bar when people use the bar. And so, yeah, that's been great. And I
That's
also
awesome.
signed up for my first race in forever. So, and Emmy might do this with me if she comes home for Thanksgiving, but it's called the
Yeah.
Turkey Trot.
And
And
it's
so,
shorter, right?
yeah, it's super flat. Like
Oh, I can do that.
it's as flat of a race as you can around the junior high, I think, or high school.
Easy.
And
That's what I need.
years ago, like almost 10 years ago now, which is crazy. Oh my god, no, not almost 10 years ago.
Math.
I was 25 and I said 2024 to 20 to
You're
25.
not 35.
I was like, wait, no. Oh my god. My math was just not mathing. Anyways,
At least you caught yourself.
7 years ago. So
Okay.
still technically almost 10.
Yeah.
I ran a half marathon and I trained ish for it and I like just jacked up my hip.
Yeah.
My hip's always been kind of funky after, and I've had sciatica issues, very light issues after it. And so I've just avoided running for 7 years.
Dang.
And we've been running in our weightlifting class. And the other day I did a half a mile straight and I was like, oh, I feel great. So I thought, I want to be able to run like a mile and a half. That's it.
Yeah. Yep.
That's still all I'm going to do. And this race will force me to be able to do that. So,
Heck yeah.
yeah.
That's awesome. And even,
Yeah.
I know a lot of running's always been around, right? But more people with social media have gotten into more of the long distance running. It's like, oh my gosh, I want to do that. But even still for me, I feel good with doing like 2 miles, right? Or my max so far has been 3. And I know that's not as long as some people, but it's still running, right? And it's still hard and you're still doing
Yeah.
it.
Yeah. I mean, if I have to run for any situation, like I want to be able to run
Yeah, like,
without
dang,
like,
I can't be the last person.
yeah. So, yeah, that's what we're doing. But yeah, even this week, I think I am waking up for 4 mornings for classes.
Oh,
Yeah.
nice.
And it's just, I'm in a good routine.
Heck yeah. And speaking of workouts, I got to do a little plug for myself for workouts, for fitness, for overall health. And honestly, it would be a high, but we're launching for Dare Girl Fitness, my other brand. We're launching our kind of our holiday hustler round, we call it, of our Fit and Fearless Circle group coaching. So it focuses on nutrition and fitness, but really just kind of the foundational basics and knowledge of weight loss, of fitness, and nutrition. And it's really fun because I started the group coaching with our other assistant coach, Ashley, 4 years ago, which is crazy. But it was originally
That is
called,
crazy.
right? It was originally called Holiday Hustlers. And so we had changed it since then to Fit Fearless Circle. We're like, let's kind of put that back in there. So this is our Holiday Hustler edition, which I just think is such a fun name. And it's going to start November 11th, run for 10 weeks. And it's going to run us through Thanksgiving, Christmas, New Year's, and a few weeks into the new year. So it's a great time frame to really help women build foundational habits through the holidays, through the new year, and to start 2025. Because I know so many women feel overwhelmed in general with their health, their fitness, their nutrition. And this is a great way to just really feel more confident about their choices, but also feel like we don't have to throw it all out the window during the holidays. So I did have to put that plug in there. We did just launch this week, and we will again start Monday, November 11th. So if y'all want to join, there's more information on my website, but I'm always posting about it and having conversations about it over on Dairy Girl Fitness as well. So that's a great way to get into a little bit of a fitness routine and also with nutrition. Had to plug
and
in.
it's nice that, like, I don't know how I feel about New Year's resolutions. I'm on the fence about them because I feel like why always wait until the new year to do something?
Exactly.
But it's nice to like have a fresh start. But
Yeah.
I get that, but like having the habits during the time when it's the hardest to have them.
Yes.
And just figuring out how to normalize it is going to make the new year feel so easy because you're already doing it.
Exactly, right? Like there's nothing wrong with having goals set up because, the holidays can be busier and if you want a little bit of a reset, but like you said, setting yourself up for success earlier is just going to make that a more seamless transition
Yeah.
and make that even easier. And like I love the holidays. We love the holidays. We're foodies. We have a good time, but it can be so honestly empowering to just feel more confident about the choices that you're making. And physically, it can make you feel better. Like I just said, we enjoy our good food, we enjoy the holidays,
Mm-hmm.
but it's also not fun feeling like shit, right? Like you still want
No.
to feel decent in your body, and that's really what we aim to focus on to help ladies like, hey, I'm gonna have fun, but I also don't want to feel like a sack of crap at the end of it and
Yeah.
feel better when I'm starting the new year.
Yep. I love that. And yeah. I just want to rescind for anyone I was thinking, I was like, maybe I shouldn't be such a hater on resolutions. Maybe that works for people. But it's good to like start fresh and set goals. But yeah, and like you were saying, I just think it's really smart to have already kind of gotten a head start on it
Yeah.
with you.
Well, I think if the resolution thing, it's making sure we set realistic ones, right? Because a
Yeah, I think
realistic
as
resolution can be
people
good.
talk like they're gonna change your life, and maybe some situations they do
Yeah.
need a dramatic change, but a lot for the majority of people, or for some people, it's like, okay, I'm gonna I can't even think of what I'm gonna climb Mount Everest this year. Like, how about, because but in that goal is I just want to hike more, and I want to
Yeah.
build up my endurance, like outside and climbing up mountains.
Yeah. Yeah. It's just making sure that whatever that is, you have a plan, right? Because for some, it's
Hmm.
like, okay, maybe you do it, girl, you go. But then, yeah, making sure you have a realistic plan to make it happen because sometimes we just don't want to set our expectations in a place where they don't align with what we're actually willing to
Yeah.
do and able to do. Like, hey, that's going to set us up for discouragement. Let's reel it back and make sure all this is working together.
Yeah, that's a better way to explain it. And what better group to learn how to do that than the Fit and Fearless Circle Holiday Hustlers Edition?
Yes, yes. I've been doing this also a high, and then we can go to our buffaloes. But last week, so it would have been October 18th. That was my official 5 years of coaching women online. I had taken my first client, yay, of October 18th, 2019. That's crazy. So it's been five
That is
years
crazy.
of coaching women with their fitness, their nutrition, their mindset habits. And so I've had a lot of the experience with the goal setting and the New Year's
Hmm.
resolutions. And so that's where I can sound more like I kind of know what I may be talking about. Yes, it's
Good,
all very exciting. And
good.
moving on from that, I want to hear your buffalo because it's funny, and then I can talk about mine.
So Phoebe right now, she had her grooming appointment yesterday, and this girl is absolutely cooked from from her puppy's annex.
I love it. This
um,
girl cooked.
she she had a bad experience at an Altoona groomer.
We won't
They
name
like
names.
schmabulous schmido. So if you're local, you'll know and beware. They just went. They did a gnarly cut on her ear, like it turned into an
Ew.
infection, like it
Ew.
was a whole thing.
Mm.
Um, and so we decided, okay, one, we need a new groomer, and two, we need to like give her some Xanax because she also hates the blow dryer to the point where
Oh,
she'll like
like those crazy videos where dogs
yeah,
bite at it.
yeah, and she could accidentally bite the groomer, which is not good.
No, not
That's
good.
very bad.
Very
So
bad.
we're like, okay, we need to drug her. And something, I don't know if I gave her too much or what, but she came home and literally was just like in slow motion,
Like a
be
giant
bobbing down.
walking.
Yeah, she made it halfway down the stairs last night to go out to pee before we all went to bed. And she just kind of like stopped in the middle and was swaying back and
Oh
forth.
my god. And then she just ends up
Yeah.
sliding down.
Yeah. And she's just like, okay. And we have these like gates up from our living room and kitchen so that
Yep.
she doesn't come and bug us while we're sleeping. And she, like, we accidentally left one of the gates open, and she never came into the bedroom last night.
Dang, that's when you know she's zonked.
That's, yeah, that's how cooked she is.
That's how cooked she is.
And even this morning, she came out and she just like looked at me like, "Mom, I'm still a little high."
But she is much more relaxed.
She is.
So
She's just straight chilling. And like usually at this time, she'd be all up in my business and her butt would be in the camera.
yeah,
So
so good for cowgirl
she
talk this morning.
good for cowgirl talk. And oh my God, she's so cute and cuddly when she's high.
Bonus.
So that's my buffalo is she comes home from the groomer smelling great, looking great. The groomer's the only one who can really like get her ears clean, which is good because
Mm.
doodles have like dirty ear problems.
Oh, ew.
And she's also cute and cuddly. So team groomer, team puppies annex.
Wins all around. Okay, wait. Well, I know it's technically not your higher win, but I would call it a win all around. And okay, for my buffalo, was it last week or 2 weeks ago, or even three, that I said my buffalo was I randomly started to watch Dancing with the Stars?
Oh
Well,
yeah.
I've kind of moved on already to The Voice, but they're on at the same time on
Oh.
Tuesdays, I think, and I've always loved singing. I mean,
Mhm.
I'm not a singer, but I love just singing, belting it out in the car, and I love watching people sing and hearing them sing. I always say if I could pick anything in the world to be amazing at, it would be to sing. I would
Yeah.
kill to be an amazing singer. Not really, but maybe sometimes. And so The Voice, it's really fun to watch people be excited about what they're doing, kind of like Dancing with the Stars, but for singing. And they're so good. Like music makes people, I know dancing can too, but like emotional, right? You can get the
Yeah.
goosebumps.
Singing's different. Singing's
Yeah,
different.
it just hits different. And the judges this season are just, they're so funny. You have Snoop Dogg, Reba, Gwen Stefani, and then Michael Bublé. And they just all have, and I, again, haven't really watched it, so I don't know what I've always known the other judges, but what they all interacted like. And this group of judges, they all just interact really funny. And Snoop Dogg is just everywhere right now, so he's hilarious. And then Michael Bublé is also just like surprisingly really funny. And I already knew he was charismatic, but
Yeah.
it's very fun and entertaining.
Yeah. I always liked when it was I'm glad that they found a good kind of like next version of Blake Shelton and the Maroon 5 guy.
Adam Levine,
Oh yeah, before he got like canceled for being a bad person,
bad
a bad
husband.
husband.
Yeah, but yeah. This
Yeah.
crew's funny.
Yeah. And plus Reba's funny. I saw she has a
Yeah.
new sitcom out. So they're all
Hmm.
just out there doing their thing, promoting their thing. Michael Bublé, I also wouldn't assume he's funny because he sings Christmas songs. So I feel like that
I
doesn't
don't know.
translate to funny to me,
Really,
you
I feel
know?
like it makes sense because his music and his voice is so suave and just very
Yeah.
cool. But
Yeah,
so
so he
that makes
seems like a
sense for how
cool
he
guy, but
interacts.
like okay, I'll have to watch cuz
I don't know. I've also seen clips of him at
yeah.
concerts where he'll just interact with the fans, and he just always seems really kind of funny in that way, and he just cares so much. And also, this isn't a dig at Ruben, but he looked at Gwen Stefani. He's like, "Who's that?" And I was like, "How dare you not know who
Oh
Gwen
my
Stefani
god.
is?" I was like, started singing "Holla Back Girl," and
Yeah.
then he also didn't know who Michael Bublé was, which I can maybe understand that more. But I was talking about his songs. I was like, I feel like everyone's heard a Michael Bublé's song, especially Christmas. I'm feeling good. The
Yeah.
I was listening to some last night because I was just like in a vibe. But yeah, so come on, Ruben, get your shit together, man.
Wow. He's too young for you, sis.
A year different. Make Joe watch and see who he knows. I bet
Oh, he'll
you
know. I
think he
mean,
would
he'll
know
know.
Gwen?
Yeah, he's old. Yeah. She's a little bit even before like our time. So, and Joe's older.
I mean, Ruben's listened to like Holla Back Girl and all of that, but
Yeah.
he
Joe
said
would
he
know who
didn't
it
know what
is.
she looked like.
I have faith.
All right, well, test it out. Test out the theory.
We'll
I'm waiting
video.
for it. But yeah, so That's my buffalo, and we're recording this on a Tuesday morning, and there's the more of the battles are happening tonight, so I'm very excited. And the battle started out last night with an older woman and a younger girl who both sing country, singing "Redneck Woman" from Snoop Dogg, and it was so much
That's
fun.
awesome.
It was a
That's
blast.
awesome. I love it.
Yeah, it was a blast, but all good things must come to an end. Not really, because the rest of this conversation is going to be fantastic, but it may not be as lighthearted. But
Hmm.
again, the rest of this episode, the rest of this conversation, diving more into the farm safety side of things, I think is going to be very impactful. You're going to take a lot of really great tips away from this, things to be aware of, things to be mindful of, and even how to build kind of like a farm safety kit on the farm. Because a lot of what we talk about with Katie is not necessarily just prevention, because that's what a lot of people focus on. It's what to
Hmm.
do after an accident happens. So we're very excited and hope y'all take a lot away from this episode and enjoy our conversation with Katie. So today we have another guest on Cowgirl Talk, which we are very excited about. So today we're going to be chatting with Katie Hammock, known as the Dairy Wife on Instagram. She is an ER nurse, a dairy farmer's wife, a mom, and a farm safety educator. And we know that we kind of have a mix of people that listen to Cowgirl Talk, but let's be honest and say that I think a lot of people that listen to Cowgirl Talk are involved in ag in some capacity or on a farm in some capacity. And so I think this episode is a really important one, but will be an impactful conversation that has a lot of takeaways that I think a lot of people can benefit from. So, Katie, thanks for coming on and sharing your insight with us.
Yes, thank you so much for having me.
Yeah, of course. And so we always like to give our audience a chance to get to know who the heck we're talking to. So, if you don't mind, would you give just a little bit of an introduction of yourself and, as we like to call it, kind of like the elevator pitch of yourself?
Yeah. So my name's Katie Hammock. Like you said, I am a registered nurse of 6 years. I've spent all 6 of my years in an emergency department in a level 1 trauma center. So we serve rural Virginia. So essentially anything critical comes to the hospital that I work at. I live on a dairy farm with my husband. My husband's a dairy farmer, currently milking about 850 cows. In rural Southern Virginia. I did not grow up on a farm. I actually grew up in Ottawa, Canada. So
Oh,
yeah,
Wow.
found myself in Southern Virginia to go to school. Had full intentions of moving back home at some point, and then I met a farmer, and so as the story goes, here we are.
they get you. That's why I moved from Pennsylvania to Georgia. Never the plan, but the dang farm boys, they can reel you in.
Yep.
And I have
So,
to ask as well, what did you end up like going to school for in Virginia that it brought you down from Canada to Virginia?
Yeah, so I went to nursing school, but I
Okay.
played soccer in college, so that's kind of how I got
Oh,
down to
you
oh,
go,
Georgia.
girl.
Yeah.
nice.
Very fun.
Well, so I'm sure you have stories upon stories of working in the ER, some serious, maybe some a little less serious. I know I always love hearing from my friends who have worked in the ER the crazy things that they've seen, and I always feel like I learn a thing or two. But I'm curious, was being an ER nurse always in the cards for you? And then um, after that, I'd love to know how you kind of started to decide, or how you started to incorporate farm safety into this profession and why.
Yeah, I went into nursing school not thinking I was going to be an ER nurse. I wholeheartedly thought I was going to be a pediatric or a labor and delivery nurse.
Okay.
And during my clinicals on labor and delivery, I didn't see a baby be born. And so that was a
Oh.
little bit of a bummer. And then during my ER shift, it was just a really busy shift. And unfortunately, I got to do CPR on somebody for the first time, and that kind of reeled me in. It was like, I love just the busyness of this, the adrenaline that it kind of gave me, and just like feeling like I was really making a difference in people's lives, and in like really their most vulnerable times of their lives. And so that's kind of what like got me interested in it. And as I like did my practicum in critical care and kind of got to see it a little bit more, I knew that that was the place for me. The farm safety thing was really kind of once I started dating my now husband at the time, and he just realized how small the agriculture community is.
Yep.
And just being the trauma center of our area, we see like any ag or farm related accidents that come, within a 200-mile radius of us come end up at our hospital. And so those patients that were like interesting things to see, like very quickly became people that I knew or
Mm.
neighbors, or like if I didn't know them, I knew I was going to like hear about it from somebody who did know them. And so that's kind of like where that started. And then I just remember there was like a couple very like specific situations that I personally felt like if they had had some tools on their farm, like maybe that could have changed the outcome. And I mean, you never can know if that for sure would have. But I remember a couple situations like thinking, if they had had a tourniquet on their farm, would they still be with us today? And so that's kind of where like my passion for like wanting to share this story and like trying to speak and get in front of farmers and talk to them about like farm safety and ag safety kind of started from.
Yeah, I can only imagine the type of things that you see in a hospital in general, but especially in an ER room. I know growing up, I wanted to be a vet for the longest time, and I remember very distinctly the story. And I know you're not a vet, but this I feel like will relate to it. My dad was like, "Okay, help me like cut some warts off of
Oh,
ears." That was it, and I had to do one, and I was like, "Oh, I can't do this," and the blood like splattered. And I was like, "No, I can't. I want to be able to do this so bad. I wish I could be that person that could be in the ER room or help the animals." And like, I can see it, but actually having to do it is a whole different story. So kudos to you on that.
mm-hmm.
Yeah, I always say like I had family that dairy farmed in northeastern Pennsylvania actually. So growing up, we would go to
Oh,
their farm, and I always say like I gave my first shot to a cow. I started my first IV on a cow. So I feel like that's kind of where a little bit of that like passion started.
Yeah, it's definitely a path that can kind of go either way. And so you got into more of the human side of things. And
Mm-hmm.
I do want to know a couple things about like maybe some of the accidents you see in the ER room. But I guess what I'm first curious about is how did you become almost like qualified, or did you have to take courses to become more educated on farm safety? Because I feel like farmers and those of us in ag, we have a general idea, but how did you get those qualifications, or what route did you go to really then be able to implement that and speak on it for people?
Yeah, so we have several certifications that we get as ER nurses. So
Okay.
several of them are trauma related, several of them are like on scene related. So, like, one certification that I have is called Stop the Bleed. And so it's essentially like really for EMT, but anybody can take it. And it's like basically like if you have like a really traumatic amputation or a really traumatic like bleeding situation, what do you do in a field? And so that's kind of like where that like taught me like what are the steps that I should do outside of the hospital prior to people arriving to the hospital. And other than that, a lot of it is just regulatory stuff that we have to be a level one trauma center. So, and for those that aren't familiar with like kind of the way the hospital system works, there's different tiered trauma centers. So level one's like the highest tier that you can get. So it's like we see the most critical patients. And so with that comes a lot of like education. There's several certifications, several trauma classes that we have to take every couple years to stay on top of certification. And then the farm safety stuff, a lot of that is just honestly personal experience that I've seen. And then just doing some of my own research here and there. But most of kind of what I talk about is like personal experience stuff, and then kind of tying in my knowledge from the trauma certifications that I have.
Okay, yeah, that makes total sense. I mean, that firsthand knowledge is, of course, going to be something that's so impactful, and then being able to tie in the medical side can really kind of bridge the gap between the two. And so then this one, I don't need it. I mean, we don't need to get like gory or anything, but we know that, like, just as you said, you're going to be that first line that's coming in for those most critical injuries. And so, what would you say are some of the most common accidents that you do see in the ER from those in agriculture?
Yeah, I definitely have a couple things that come to mind. I think hemorrhage, so like really uncontrolled bleeding accidents, are kind of probably the most common thing that we see. I've seen a lot of chainsaw injuries, so a lot of like chainsaws to the legs, like trying to
Oh my
clear,
God.
oh my God.
like trying to.
Goosebumps just on my arm.
I know. I'm
Oh,
thinking of
God
like running
bless
through
you
a
and the work you've
cornfield
done.
during like haunted cornfields and they chase you with chainsaws. Like, no, this is real life now.
Yeah, and
Ooh.
unfortunately, they are like, I don't know how much details you want me to go into, but they're just very not nice because they don't cut clean, right? So like a
That's a good,
chainsaw
yeah.
hits you in it, so it's just not a good situation. But
Yeah.
that's a really common one that we see. I've
Oh,
seen a
that's so
lot.
sad.
of, I've seen some amputations. I've seen a lot of finger amputations from like chainsaw axes, things like that. I've seen hands mangled in PTO shafts. I've
Yep.
seen, I have seen, unfortunately, this one like is, oh, this one kind of creeps me out a little bit, but I've seen like people get run over by mowers or bush hogs.
Yep.
So I've seen like legs amputated from that. Um, have seen people like fall, just like kind of fall off tractors and break their hips is kind of another common one, especially like in some of the older farmers that, you know, are maybe a little stubborn. You know how sometimes they get that like, you know, are trying to do things that, you know, and trying to be independent and then like fall or just lose their balance or things like that. And then another one that's like sometimes egg, sometimes not egg, is we see a lot of accidental gunshot wounds, like especially to the groin, I feel like I see, or to the hand.
Ooh.
Oh my
And
God.
like hunting season's about to start here, so we kind of just know that that's something that's going to be like we're going to see more of as that comes in.
Oh my gosh. So it sounds like, and this might be generalizing it too much, but even in corporate safety training, when their safety trainings are like, know where the exit is if there's a fire, or you sit too much.
Yeah.
I know that sounds silly, but a lot of it is always centered around complacency. And it's like everyday tasks that you just kind of do over and over again that, you know, when you turn on the chainsaw, you're not assuming that you're going to lose a finger, but if you get complacent in things, that's not good. So I, you know, would love for you to give us kind of a rundown, or what are some of the practical farm safety tips that anyone in ag, whether you're on a farm or you're a person who visits farm or you have influence on a farm, should know.
Yeah, that's a great question. I think that there's kind of like two different ways you can go about answering this question. One is more like preparing for and like trying to be safe. And then the other route is like responding to that farm accident that happens after the accident has happened. And I think one of the biggest things in just like preparing is understanding that like accidents do happen. I always say like nobody ever thinks they're going to come to the emergency department, especially like for like farm related accidents or like really bad traumas. And so I think just like realizing that like it can happen to anybody is a huge like first step. And then also like, you know, obviously there is like some of the machinery side of things, and that's like not necessarily my bread and butter because I don't know like a ton about it. I can run, you know, tractors here and there with some help, but more like what I like to focus on is like how do you respond to the emergency after that happens, and just like trying to be prepared for that worst case scenario. And I think for me, like us on our farm, we have a farm safety kit that has like kind of the top items that I have seen save lives on farms. And so like I encourage, you know, everybody that I know to have like at least these 5 items on their farms that I think I have genuinely seen make a difference in their lives. And so the first one and foremost, in my opinion, that people should have is a tourniquet. And it's just like a really easy, relatively cheap item that you can buy on Amazon that stops bleeding. So essentially it is going to, like, in that accident that you get in a PTO shaft and your hand gets mangled, you can put a tourniquet on the arm, and that's like the number one thing that I've seen save lives. Another kind of like thing I recommend people having is called Quick Clot, and that's like a type of gauze that essentially is going to, it actually clots your blood faster than regular gauze would. So it has clotting factors in it, and so it actually is going to clot your blood off faster. So if you have like, this is really good for like those accidental gunshot wounds to your hand or to your groin or areas to your head, and you can kind of just press and hold pressure on that area, and essentially the gauze is going to help you clot off that like cut or injury or anything like that.
Wow.
And then one of the couple other things that I just like recommend having that are like relatively cheap is Coban, or also known as vet wrap, and that's just like to maintain pressure. It can be used. I mean, I've seen it used as a tourniquet in like the event of emergency. It can be used to maintain like gauze or that quick clot on pressure. Kind of a random one that I've seen a handful of times used is a whistle, and that's in those
Oh.
instances.
That is so smart.
Yeah, especially during like grain, and I know it's different everywhere, but like harvest season, grain season, if someone's in a, like someone falls into a corn pit, right? I mean,
Yeah.
like
Yeah.
whatever it is to get noticed.
Yeah. And I hadn't even thought about, like, we don't have a ton of like huge like row crop farmers here,
Yeah,
just
neither
in the
down
mountains of
here.
Virginia. But I haven't even thought about that, but that's a great one too. And I've seen it used for people that have like fallen out of their tractor and didn't have cell phone service, so they like blew their
Yeah.
whistle to get somebody to come to
Well,
them.
yeah, because you're rural America. That makes, you know what, the
Oh,
whistle
yep.
just blew my mind. How simple that is, but how
Yeah.
smart it is.
Yeah. And then the other thing I have is a CPR shield, and that's kind of what entails our first aid kit. We have some Band-Aids and, you know, some other kind of like super basic things. But for our farm kit, like our emergency kit, that's kind of what we have that entails that. Unfortunately, farmers are at risk for cardiac events, and, you know, we hate to think about that. But just like with the average age of farmers being like in their late 50s, and like sometimes farmers' diets aren't always, you know, the best.
Yeah.
The tractor diets.
Yeah.
I've seen all the field meals people are posting. They look delicious, but yeah.
Yeah. And so that's kind of like preparing and a little bit of responding to the emergency farm safety tips. And then I think some of the other ones that kind of like come to mind are just like realizing, like, do you know the 911 addresses of the farm fields that you farm, sorry,
Oh,
because
that's a good point.
yeah. So I know for us, like our fields are all called, like named after the person that lived there, you know, like 200 years ago. And so we don't know the 911 address to them. So if there is truly an emergency, that could like waste precious time
Yeah.
for you.
Yeah.
And then also one other thing kind of is just having, sorry, my kids are sad.
It's okay.
Is just having a list of phone numbers of like important phone numbers. So like if there's
Yep.
truly an emergency on your farm, like you're not going to think, you know, you're not going to be thinking straight. And so what can you do to prepare yourself to be in the most like the best headspace, or kind of have everything right there for you.
Yeah.
And so that's kind of like where my mind goes to initially when talking about some of like the practical farm safety tips that like you can be including on your farm. I think when it comes to kids too, that's a really like hot topic, I think, and just starting those conversations young and like making them aware that like farm safety tips can happen, but also just understanding like whatever, and that looks very different on everybody's operation of what their rules are, but like whatever the rules are that you establish, like making sure that everybody on the farm knows what those rules are. And so like for us, that looks like we don't allow our son to ride on an open cab tractor or a lawnmower, because I've seen that in real life and not end well. And so, you know, I think that looks very different for everybody. But I try to focus kind of more on the, like, an accident has happened and we know accidents are going to happen. And then now what? And so that's kind of where that safety kit comes in. And like trying to ensure that everybody knows how to utilize a tourniquet. Everybody knows how they should be using the quick clot, when they should use a CPR shield, and if you know, you can go to a CPR class, they're free to take. So if you can take one, then like that can save lives, because you know, some of that stuff, you know, for every minute that passes, the survivability rate decreases by 10%. So if 5 minutes pass without CPR being initiated, I mean, unfortunately, the survivability chance is 50%. And that's huge, especially in rural places that it's going to take, you know, 10, 15 minutes for somebody to get to us. So just kind of trying to like react to like those accidents that happen and preparing ourselves to be in the best position when something like that happens.
So I really like the angle that you're taking, which is, okay, things are going to happen. A lot of people focus on how to prevent it, but God forbid in the situation that it does happen, how do we react? There were a lot of things that you mentioned in this safety kit that I would have no idea what to do with it. If you handed me a tourniquet, I wouldn't even realize you handed me a tourniquet. Like,
Same. I was actually gonna like, I wanted to Google it after. I was like, I don't know what that looks like.
So I guess, I mean, obviously you are now a new resource on your page to learn how to use things like this. But are there any just general resources that you would
Ooh, good question.
recommend to better understand, okay, that's great. Where do I go to even learn how to do this? Or who do I call to learn how to do this if Katie can't come to my farm?
Yeah, I think that was like one of the things for me. So one of the reasons, another reason kind of why I put together the items in a kit is because when we were building our new parlor at the beginning of the year, we were trying to come up with a first aid kit. And like when I was looking for stuff online, they were either like so ridiculously expensive and had so much stuff that I felt like we would probably never ever use, even if we like in the event of emergency, I'm like, we're not going to really use that. Or it was like had band-aids and like a piece of tape, and I was like, well, that's not really going to help us that much. And so that was kind of where I came up with like trying to put together my own kits and having stuff that I truly feel makes a difference in it. So yes, obviously I have videos and stuff on my Instagram of like how to use each item and like when and how you should use each item. But there's also a lot, like you said, there's a lot of resources out there. A lot of the ones that I have found are not ag or farm specific. And most of the farm safety stuff that I've been able to see, like you said, kind of focuses on that prevention and focuses on like a lot of machinery and harvest season and that kind of stuff. But the American Heart Association and the American Red Cross are two organizations that come to mind that put on a lot of free like classes, free courses, and have a lot of free information on their website. So I know around here, and I feel like it's similar in a lot of areas, a lot of like fire and EMS, like the local firehouses will put on free classes for CPR and basic first aid.
Oh.
And I know our hospital does that as well. So we'll put on like a free course for CPR and first aid and kind of just how to like stop the bleed, how to do CPR, and some of that like basic first aid knowledge that, you know, can really come in handy. And the other thing I always tell people too is, you know, if you can get some of these items, if you get a tourniquet, like it doesn't hurt. I mean, sometimes it's uncomfortable, but it's not going to hurt anybody to put a tourniquet on and practice on like your husband or your friend or your sister or whatever.
Yes.
And so the more times you use it in real life, the more comfortable you're going to be when you actually have to use it in an emergency situation. And so I always encourage people, like, if you buy a tourniquet, like take it out of the bag, try it, practice it. It doesn't like degrade it. It doesn't make it any less, you know, less usable or less work. Like it doesn't make it that it won't work as well when that like event happens. And just kind of trying to like get as much practice as you can with some of these items.
Yeah, that makes total sense of, you know, knowing that you don't want something like that to happen, but if you're going to have those things on farm, at least have a general idea of like, hey, this may not be perfect on how I use it, but I need to kind of understand how to at least get it started to potentially, you know, save this person's life. And I know you said for what you like to focus on is mostly, you know, on the after part of it, but I also know that with people coming into the ER, you probably see some injuries that a lot of them could have been preventable. So just like off the top of your head, and I know this is what a lot of people focus on, but are there any practices that you even try to implement on your own farm that is like, hey guys, let's just follow these few things to try to avoid as many injuries as possible, whether that's mindset or whether it's practices? I know you mentioned like your son on the tractor. Is there anything else that you guys really try to focus on to just bring more awareness and mindfulness to it?
Yeah, I think like first and foremost that comes to my mind is, and I have a little toddler, so that's kind of like where my mind goes, is just like making kind of everybody else on the farm aware of what our rules are. So, you know, for us, like the no open cab tractors, but like a cab tractor is fine if he's in the buddy seat and, you know, that kind of thing. One of the other things that we do is we try always to like have the tractor stop and be turned off before we let our kids get nearby. I have just like seen really bad accidents on tractors, and I've seen really, really bad accidents with boats that were left on, and kids like got too close to them. And just like trying to like really, I think the biggest thing is like cutting off machinery before our kids get close to it. Being aware of like what machinery we're using and like what we're wearing as well. So like if my husband has like a really baggy sweatshirt on, like sometimes like we'll try and just tell him to take it off before he goes and like messes with something or does something like that, and just trying to have a second person. I know that it's not possible to have two people do everything on the farm, but in some of those like more risky situations, like trying to have a second person there, just in case something does happen, then there's somebody there that can respond to that emergency. So I know like my husband was up in a bucket loader the other day, and we had somebody that was just like spotting. He wasn't in the tractor, they weren't on the bucket loader, they were just truly there just to like see in case like there was something that we couldn't see or they couldn't see, or just kind of like be an eye for them, and that kind of thing.
Yeah, and that's going to be a person as well. If that person gets hurt or knocked unconscious or whatnot, they can be the one to alert someone. So I love that you have kind of toolkits for the before part and potentially the after part if that would unfortunately happen.
Yeah.
But with having the toolkit and having a lot of that awareness on your farm, we know that maybe not everyone is as open to change on different operations, on different farms. And maybe they've been doing things the same way for quite a long period of time and they've never had issues, right? So it's like, why would we need to change? So if anyone is listening to this and it's like, you're trying to tell me to convince my grandpa or my dad or my grandma to like make this change and they're not listening, how do you work with farmers or how do you suggest they really have these conversations to make sure that everyone is on board with making safety a priority on the operation and really just recognizes the importance of that, even if nothing bad has ever happened?
Yeah, that is a tough conversation to have sometimes, especially with people that, sometimes are set in their ways. And I recognize that, you can tell farmers to do everything by the guidelines,
Yeah.
and like, let's be honest, that's not always going to happen.
Yep.
And so like, that's kind of what I try, the route that I try to take is be like, I am a nurse and I'm an ER nurse and I'm here to help you help yourself once
Yeah.
something happens. And so when I speak to people or when I put on workshops, I try to just like be super honest with them. And sometimes that doesn't sound like super great, but sometimes the pictures I'm able to show of like, this is somebody who lost their arm because they weren't careful. And this is somebody that like a tourniquet saved their life. And this is somebody that had a puncture injury, that had a piece of metal sticking through their neck. And this happened. Like, this is real stuff that happens to people. And this is stuff that I've talked about. And sometimes, often, like the farmers, sometimes it's the people that you at least expect to be like, wow, like I didn't know that like that happened around here. I didn't know that that happens as often as it does. And, I hate to like be the bearer of bad news, but I also think that it's important to just show the reality and show, the potential and the seriousness of injuries. They say 33% of farmers annually get injured.
Wow.
And out of that, 3% of those 33% have a disability or permanent injury.
Wow.
And so that's a huge
staggering
population.
Yeah, I wouldn't have guessed that.
Yeah. Woof. I don't know. I have goosebumps. I don't know about these farmers, but for me, fear sells.
Yes, it does. We know it works in
And
food
I know
marketing.
you're not scaring them to scare them, but there's a major element, I feel like,
a shock
of fear
factor
when you understand truly what could happen. That's going to make people buy in, just reminding them, like, when you get complacent, when you don't pay attention, this is what happens. Someone's not being naggy. They're just trying to help, like, make sure that you understand what could happen if you don't take appropriate precautions.
Yep.
Yeah, absolutely.
Oh my goodness. Okay.
On a lighter note,
I think I might need to put a trigger warning on the beginning of this episode.
Yeah, well,
Becca
she kept
almost
it.
faints.
Well, yeah, because she kept it like when that chainsaw injury, she's like, it looked not nice. So we don't go into like too gory. Just you gotta be honest, right? And if we have to be that annoying, nagging person, and that saves a life, then we can take on that role.
Yeah, well, absolutely.
And I think it sounds like you have a little bit of, or already had somewhat of an ag background coming into this relationship in the world of farming. However, I think that you still bring an outside perspective to your farm and to farmers that follow you or that you're able to have conversations with, just given your background and also your career. So I would love to know, in your opinion, what is the value that someone like you brings, to a farm, because you have more of an outsider or outside
Yeah.
perspective.
Yeah, I think I am just able to see things from a different side. My husband and I were talking the other day about not to knock anybody that talks about farm safety because it's so important and prevention. Obviously, if you are able to prevent these injuries, then you don't actually hopefully don't need anything that I, would then kind of talk about. But we were kind of talking about how a lot of the stuff, the farm safety things that we've heard previously or that we're able to see or when we research really focuses on the farmer preventing accidents and focuses on, the mechanical side of things and the machinery and being safe around animals and that kind of stuff. And that, like I said, is so important, and not to take away anything from any of that. But I think that I'm able to just bring in a unique perspective of the sense that I am an emergency room nurse first and foremost, and that's kind of my passion and that's my love. And I just happened to marry a dairy farmer, and now I also am very passionate about ag, and I mean I've been passionate about the dairy industry just kind of growing up around some dairy farms in my family and stuff, but it just brings a whole new perspective when you marry somebody that's in the industry, and those patients, every time a helicopter comes from our area, I know which helicopter responds to our area, and my heart sinks a little bit if I'm working because I never know what happens if this is the time that it's somebody I know, or this is the time that it's my husband or whatever. And so I think I'm just able to bring just a different perspective of farm safety to the table, and what to do in the situation of when the prevention hasn't worked, or maybe hopefully you're not just doing something dangerous on purpose, but I mean it happens, and it also happens that people do everything right and still have an accident, and so just being able to bring that perspective of seeing a lot of farm accidents, unfortunately, to kind of the farm safety table, and kind of discussing it. I also think medical emergencies in general, I see a lot of non-farm accidents. I probably see more non-farm medical emergencies at work. And so just being able to bring those two, I try to just bring awareness to cardiac events and CPR, stroke awareness and that kind of stuff as well, just because it can happen anywhere. And so just the more knowledge that we know about these medical emergencies and traumas and accidents, the better off the outcome is going to be for the people that have to go through them.
Yeah, I really like that, because I think sometimes we all get caught up in our own bubble a little bit, and it can be very helpful and impactful to bring in a fresh perspective. And I'd love to before we dive into our fun little weekly hot take obsession thing, I'd like to ask not necessarily a personal question, but a little bit different than just farm safety in itself. So we know that farming and agriculture and dairy, it's wonderful, but it can also sometimes get heavy. And then when you're also an ER nurse and seeing a lot of these accidents, that can get heavy. And then when you're also balancing being a wife, being a mom, and wanting to be present, how do you find the balance in that, right? And balance is it's the worst word, right? Because there's never a perfect balance, but how do you almost compartmentalize maybe these things of trying to wear all these different hats? Well, some of them can be great, but some can also be really heavy.
Yeah, it's a great question. I think.
Also, how do you raise children without not freaking out every time they breathe or
literally
move? Right? Seeing all of this, I feel like my child would be in a bubble.
Yeah. I'll be honest, there's definitely been some nights. So I work both days and nights. And my night shifts, typically I'm not there the entire night. It kind of just depends on what our department looks like. But there's definitely been some nights that I've come home at 2 a.m. and I've had a not great night in the pediatric ER, and I just pick my baby up and I rock him, and I'm you know what, it's okay. And it doesn't matter what other people say about sleeping and waking up babies. And I mean, he never wakes up, but sometimes, you just need the snuggles. No, I think for ER nurses in general, one of the things that I try to talk to our staff about, and just my other coworkers, is being able to deal with what we see on a daily basis. I always tell people if the average person saw what we saw in our emergency room, they would be traumatized. And for me, that has taken, several years to kind of be able to compartmentalize things. And I mean, I still come home and there's certain cases that like I can't shake off.
Yeah.
But I drive an hour to work. So I do feel like that helps and just allows me to decompress a little bit. And then by the time I come home, I'm like fresh and I'm like, okay, I can be my best version of myself, or try to be the best version of myself as a mom and a wife. Kind of going from there. And I think for us, like, I am just very fortunate. My husband is very supportive in kind of like all of my endeavors and like what I want to do. And so he is great at like, you know, taking our child if I need him to, or like just communicating with him, being like, hey, can I have like 20 minutes to go for a walk or for a run, because I just would like 20 minutes by myself. And just like having that communication, I think is like the biggest thing for us. We're blessed with like a wonderful village. My in-laws live half a mile down the street. And I, you know, like we could not do it without them. My parents still live in Canada and come down like very regularly and just like help us, you know, whenever they can and however they can. And so I think just like being able to communicate is probably the biggest thing of like what I'm feeling and what my needs are and like what my husband's needs are. And my needs aren't always like, I don't always get everything that I need, but just like trying to find like us meeting in the middle of like, okay, I just could really use like 10 minutes by myself if that's all that I can have. And, you know, then like if you know, then you can have 10 minutes or whatever. And so just kind of trying to do what I feel like is best. And I probably fail more times than I don't, but, just kind of trying to like be the best version of myself that I can be. Because I have learned that I can't pour into anybody else if I'm not like taking care of myself. And so it's taken a lot of years to get there. But like just realizing that and knowing like when I'm like low, like, or when I need something, like just, you know, being able to talk through that.
Boom. Mic drop.
Love
you can't
it.
pour from an empty cup. And communication is so underestimated, right? Like, yes, you probably have to have like uncomfortable conversations all the time, right? With seeing trauma and with, you know, dealing with farmers who are maybe dealing with that, but moving past those uncomfortable conversations and important conversations can really lead to the desired outcome. So I love your perspective on that. And I'm not sure, Becca, do you feel like any less that you have to put your kid in a bubble one day?
No, only more.
Isn't there a movie
I don't know. My anxiety is the kind of anxiety where I think of the worst possible outcome no matter what we're doing.
That's so fun.
So fun for me. And so I might be medicated by the time I have children. No shame
Whatever
in that.
works. Whatever works.
Nothing wrong with that. I mean, I feel like for the kid thing is like, it's hard, but it also like, I see the like 1 in like 1,000 chance, like times that would happen. And so I don't know if that makes it better or worse, but we always say like we compartmentalize things to make it allow us to cope. And so how I deal with it is probably very different than how like the average mom would deal with it. But like I tell myself stories or tell myself that like this child was different and it wouldn't happen to my kid, even though I know like that it could very well happen to mine, because that allows me to compartmentalize it and ultimately like deal with it a little bit better. And I don't know if that's right or wrong, but that's like where I've kind of gotten to. And just, I mean, there's definitely things that I see that I'm like, no, we can absolutely not do that because I saw this one time that like that happened. But I also see a lot of kids that like kids are the most resilient patients we have. And so we see a lot of sick kids that like come in and have great outcomes. So, you know, I kind of get to see that more than I don't.
Yeah, the lights going on with our spooky conversation about it. It's like flickering in the background. Well, then deviating from our spooky conversation, which no, that was a great note to end it on. Like, kids rock. They're super resilient. But we always, again, kind of like to end our episodes with some sort of weekly hot take or weekly obsession. And often when we have guests, kind of tying it into that conversation. So Becca was super clever on this, and she had the idea of, okay, what's your favorite safety gadget? And I feel like we can all take this whatever way you want, right? Like whether that's walking around, whether it's on the farm, whether it's in your car or whatever it is. So I feel like this could go a couple different ways and maybe provide some different perspectives. So Becca, I know you already had some when we were texting. So, and I don't know if I have one yet. So you go first.
Yeah. So I learned this from, well, actually our mom and our dad always had blankets and gloves and like a first aid kit in the car. So
Yep.
if you break down, and I always try to like have a snack with me. God forbid if like
Granola bar's gonna
we
save me.
break down. I'm not about to survive in the wilderness. Like I want to be warm and I don't want to be hungry. And of course my dog decides to like itch her collar
And
as
you
soon
have
as I
a
was
dog
talking
with
about
you
that.
to fend off
Oh,
all the
my-
animals.
Yeah, right. The dog would be like, bear, eat her first. She'd feed me to the bear first.
Probs.
But so I always have a blanket in my car, gloves, like an extra jacket, a first aid safety kit, and then like a little tool which I actually don't know how to use. I think I just hit the window with it.
Yes.
Yeah, or like, and then it also has a knife to like slice your seatbelt.
I've seen videos.
So
Yes.
it's there, and I know the blade. I'm like, okay, I shoved that on the seatbelt, and I know at one point if I hit the window with some part of this, it will break. So I also have that in the car.
Yeah, like if you get submerged underwater,
Yeah.
it's like, oh my God.
Yeah, I used to have pepper spray, but TSA took that once, and I just never rebought it.
Oh, that's the route I was going to go with it. So we grew up in Pennsylvania, of course, and so blankets and all of that was important. Now in Florida, I think I've gotten jaded, maybe a little bit, not as intentional. And I got a new car 2 years ago, which is not an excuse. It was 2 years ago, and I've not filled it up with all these goodies yet. But what I do have is like a little portable pepper spray and one of those. I think it's called a birdie alarm. It's yeah, you can pull it and it'll. Oh, it's like a mini siren, right? And so
Yeah.
that's more so like that's kind of the personal safety of if you're walking or if there's an intruder or whatever it may be. And I know, unfortunately, as women, it's maybe just something we think of more often.
I
And
always think I'm gonna get murdered.
yeah, like way more often than
It does not
probably the
matter
chances.
who you are crossing the street, you're about to kill me.
Grandma, she's doing it this time. Like, I feel that. So yeah, those are mine.
I want to end with Katie's because I feel like hers are going to be a mic drop, but I have
More
one more
useful.
I actually just thought of. And this is a crazy situation I was in with an ex-boyfriend who literally caught himself on fire.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, this
he
was
did.
crazy. He, like, oil on the stove caught fire, and he, before we could even think, put it underwater. Like, kitchen
Becca.
exploded in flames. And thank God, though, I mean, it was not good either way. And like, he couldn't stop, drop, and roll because the floor was covered in oil. So he had to like take off his shirt and his arm got burnt. It was a wild experience, like crazy. And so I was talking to the like the EMT who came over, and he was like, well, why don't you use the fire extinguisher? And I said, oh, well, I don't even know where it is. And then he looked at the fire extinguisher we had, and he said, honestly, if you would have sprayed this at this proximity in this little kitchen, it would have spread the fire faster.
Oh my God.
And so for kitchen fires, on your stove, on your toaster, your microwave, whatever, you have to have specific fire extinguishers for every type of fire, which, like, who the hell's going to think of that? Like, so they said have a fire blanket in your kitchen.
Oh.
Baking soda is also good, but like, when am I going to find the baking soda? So
Yeah,
a
like,
blanket is just like
I'm
throw it
panicking.
over, and it's right there by where I cook. And like, I never would have thought of that unless I had had that experience, Katie, kind of how you were saying experiences will drive you to do certain things. But my God, everyone put a fire blanket in your kitchen.
Oh.
Tourniquet
All right.
on your farm, fire blanket in your kitchen.
And pepper spray and an alarm in your car. And gloves.
We've got it covered.
Yeah, now you got to wrap it up like the cherry on top.
No, I was just going to say, side tangent real quick, of the, I don't know, this might be a little graphic, but of the fire thing, I have seen, unfortunately, seen a lot of people burn themselves very badly, but if you wear oxygen, do not smoke a cigarette while wearing oxygen, because I have seen that one go really bad really quickly. Of just
Our
like
pap
people,
used
like,
to do that.
Yep.
Yeah.
We're lucky
Yep.
he didn't blow up the whole house with
Yep.
everyone in it.
I've seen that like go so bad so quickly.
Pro
but
tip, everyone.
Pro tip.
Don't do that.
It does not end well. I don't know. Mine, I feel like are probably going to be kind of disappointing. But what I have in my car is I have a CPR shield because I just feel like you never know who you're going to come across that you have to do CPR on. I have children's Motrin because that is like a game changer if my child is like grumpy and like teething or something. And then on the farm, we just have a bunch of tourniquets everywhere because I
laying
feel like
around the
that
farm.
is the biggest thing in my opinion, that like is gonna change the outcome of a farm accident. So that's what I have.
I feel like
love
we're
it.
very well rounded with we've got all the bases covered, right? And you even brought in the mom aspect. I'm sure the mom's listening and be like, yes, the Motrin, we get it.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh. Well, this conversation's gone a couple different ways, but I think regardless, I think there's been a lot of impactful, important takeaways, and we truly appreciate your time for coming on to Cowgirl Talk and talk about it. And so, if people want to continue learning more, or if they want to see these videos that you were talking about, where can people find you and continue following along?
Yeah, I am mostly on Instagram. Everything I post on Instagram goes to Facebook, but
Okay.
on Instagram, like you said, at the Dairy Wife, I try to post like videos of kind of all of the things that I talk about and how to actually use them. Because, like you said, it doesn't really help if you have the items and don't know how and when you should use
Yep.
them. So I try to be intentional about posting like how and when we should be using things. And then, if anybody is interested in having me lead a workshop or come to them and kind of like do more hands on, feel free to DM me or kind of chat about some of those options.
Awesome. I love that. Yeah, for anyone within that area, Northeast even, definitely an amazing resource to utilize. So again, thank you for coming on. Thanks for sharing all those tidbits with us. And thanks for not getting, some people may like the gory stuff, but just keeping it like PG 13. So we do appreciate that. And for anyone listening, if you want to follow along with Cowgirl Talk, you can find us on all socials at Cowgirl Talk. And if you enjoyed the show, please leave us a review, provide some feedback, follow along, subscribe, all the things that we're supposed to say. We appreciate it. And thanks for tuning into this episode.
Yeah, and as always, have a great and safe day, cowgirls.
Oh, bye, y'all.
Bye.